It's 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. You realize you haven't actually spoken to anyone today, except the pharmacy clerk, and that was just, thank you. Your phone hasn't rung. Nobody's texted. The silence in your home doesn't feel peaceful anymore. It feels heavy. And you think, maybe if I had one good friend, one person who really got me, then I wouldn't feel this way. Here's what research shows. That belief, the one about needing that perfect friend, is actually what keeps many people over 60 feeling isolated. The real solution is simpler than you think, and it doesn't require finding a soulmate or a best friend. It starts with small, everyday connections: the neighbor you wave to, the librarian who knows your name, the person at your walking group. These brief moments do more for your mood and health than most people realize. By the end of this video, you'll understand why casual connections, not just deep ones, hold the real secret to ending loneliness after 60. And I'll show you the one daily habit that people who never feel lonely all practice. Let me start with why our search for that perfect connection often keeps us stuck feeling isolated. The surprising part. The answer has nothing to do with finding better friends. It has everything to do with how we've been thinking about friendship itself. Humans are wired for belonging. You've felt it your whole life, the comfort of being known deeply by someone who understands you without words. But as we move through our 60s and beyond, that circle naturally narrows. Friends move, health changes, energy shifts, and for many, the idea of building a new best friend can feel impossible. Here's what research now shows. Mental health in later life isn't just protected by closeness, but by variety, the range of different people you interact with, even briefly. A diverse network matters more than the intensity of any single relationship. When you rely only on a tiny circle, every silence feels heavier. Many older adults chase the idea of recreating friendships from decades past. But that pursuit often leads to disappointment, narrowing our energy into searching rather than connecting. You might think, if I can't find deep connection, why bother with small talk? Yet those small exchanges are exactly what protect your sense of belonging. This is where sociologist Mark Granovetter's groundbreaking theory, the strength of weak ties, becomes vital. In his research on social networks, he found that people are often most enriched and informed not by their closest contacts, but by acquaintances. Light relationships act as bridges, giving you fresh conversations, unexpected opportunities, and a subtle sense of vitality. But here's what surprised researchers most. It wasn't just that weak ties helped. In some cases, they helped more than close friendships. How is that possible? Let me make this real with an everyday example. A viewer once told me she felt painfully alone despite having 2 loyal friends. They were caring, but her days were mostly silent. Then she joined a neighborhood gardening group. Within weeks she was chatting about flowers, sharing seed packets, laughing with people she barely knew, and the fog lifted. There was no single best friend, just consistent warmth and recognition from multiple faces. Psychologically, this makes perfect sense. Brief, positive encounters signal safety to your brain. Each good morning tells your nervous system you belong here. That's the key. When you integrate these moments into your daily rhythm, loneliness begins to lose its grip. So here's the one habit that people who never feel lonely all practice. They greet at least one person by name every single day. Not just a nod, not just a smile. They use the person's name, the mail carrier, a neighbor, someone at their regular cafe. It takes less than 60 seconds, but it transforms an anonymous interaction into a personal one. Sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But there's neuroscience behind why names create belonging that other greetings don't. And there's a specific way to do this that makes all the difference. Most people miss it and wonder why it doesn't work. Here's why understanding the science matters. Without it, you'll do what most people do. Try the habit for a week, see no results, and give up right before it would have worked. The science explains the timeline, and more importantly, why this simple act has more impact than an hour-long heart-to-heart with a close friend. That sounds backwards. Let me show you why it's true. Let's get specific. Light social ties are the people you know by face or name, but not deeply, the ones you greet on walks, the barista who remembers your order, the volunteer who sits beside you at an event. They don't know your private worries, but they quietly brighten your days. Multiple longitudinal studies on aging confirm this. Older adults with more casual contacts report greater happiness and fewer depressive symptoms than those who interact mostly with close friends or family. Research published in Psychology and Aging found that diversity in contact, having both strong and light ties, predicts mental well-being far better than the sheer number of close relationships alone. Why does this work? There are 3 specific benefits. First, novelty keeps your mind engaged. Every new person adds unpredictability. They tell different stories, offer fresh viewpoints, introduce new experiences. This constant flow of micro-novelty keeps your brain active and helps maintain cognitive sharpness. When life becomes too predictable, our emotional circuitry dulls. Casual ties provide fresh input that keeps you mentally alert. Second, bridging expands your world. Through light connections, information travels farther. Someone at your art class mentions a free concert. A neighbor tells you about a walking group. Suddenly, opportunities you'd never hear about from family alone appear. Your world feels larger, more full of possibility. Third, emotional rhythm stabilizes your mood. Think of these interactions as gentle pulses throughout your day, short exchanges that keep emotional energy circulating. You greet the mail carrier, nod at the librarian, chat with a fellow shopper. Each moment triggers a small release of dopamine and oxytocin, neurotransmitters that regulate stress and gently elevate mood. Together, they keep your emotional state balanced. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds nice in theory, but does it actually change anything measurable in real life? Remember that habit I mentioned, greeting one person by name daily? Now you can see why it works. When you use someone's name, you're not just being polite. You're triggering all 3 benefits at once. You're creating novelty because names make interactions personal. You're building a bridge that can lead to information and connection. And you're establishing an emotional rhythm that your nervous system recognizes as safety. But theory is one thing. Let me show you what this actually looked like for someone who went from 7 interactions in a week, most with cashiers, to having a reason to wake up on Tuesday mornings. This is what all 3 benefits look like when they compound over 4 weeks. A friend of mine named Margaret went through exactly this about 2 years ago. She was 68, had been widowed 3 years earlier, and her world had quietly contracted in ways she didn't fully recognize at first. She still had her daughter who called every Sunday, and a close friend from church who visited once a month. But the days between those calls and visits felt like walking through fog. Heavy, silent. She'd go entire Tuesdays speaking to no one but the checkout clerk at the grocery store. Margaret was convinced the answer was finding her people, a new best friend, maybe a tight-knit group of women like she'd had in her 40s. She tried joining a book club but felt out of place. She went to a quilting circle twice and never went back because everyone seemed to already know each other. Every attempt felt forced, awkward, and exhausting. She told me she was starting to think maybe she just wasn't meant to have friends anymore. I suggested she try something completely different. Keep a smile journal for 1 month. Not a diary of feelings, just a simple tally. Every time she had a brief, friendly exchange with another person, she'd make a mark. The grocery clerk who asked about her day. A dog walker who smiled. People at the water aerobics class she'd been attending but barely speaking to. Just notice them. Count them. No pressure to make friends, just awareness. Week 1 was sobering. She counted 7 interactions total for the entire week. Most were purely functional, paper or plastic. Thank you. But she did notice that 3 people at her Tuesday and Thursday water aerobics class were starting to recognize her face. They'd nod when she arrived. Week 2, something small shifted. She learned the instructor's name was Rita. There was a woman named Donna who always arrived 10 minutes early and stretched in the same corner by the window. Margaret started arriving early too, just to have something to do. They began chatting while they stretched. Nothing profound, just complaints about how cold the pool was, jokes about their achy knees, comments about the terrible music Rita played. Margaret counted 14 interactions that week. Still brief, still surface level, but she noticed she was thinking about Tuesdays and Thursdays differently. She had a small knot of anticipation in her stomach on those mornings. Week 3, Rita asked Margaret how her weekend had been, actually seemed interested in the answer. Donna mentioned there was a great farmers' market on Saturday mornings, suggested Margaret should check it out. So she did. And there, at the farmers' market, she saw 2 other women from the water aerobics class. They waved, called her over, and invited her to grab coffee afterward at a little cafe nearby. During that coffee, she learned about a free library lecture series on local history, a discount day at the garden centre, and a concert in the park that next weekend. Information she'd never have found on her own. Margaret counted 23 interactions that week, some lasting only seconds, others a few minutes, but each one left a small warmth. Notice what's happening here. She didn't plan any of this. The opportunities found her because she was finally visible. By week 4, Margaret wasn't counting anymore. She told me later, I realized I'm not having deep conversations with these people. Mostly we talk about tomatoes, complain about the parking, or share pictures of grandchildren on our phones. I don't know their life stories. They don't know mine. But Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I wake up feeling lighter. I have faces I look forward to seeing. People who notice if I'm not there. One week I had a cold and missed both classes, and Rita texted me. I didn't even know she had my number until then. I wasn't lonely anymore, and I couldn't even tell you these people's last names. Here's what Margaret experienced without fully realizing it. Novelty, Rita's terrible music taste, Donna's stories about her rescue cats, the farmers' market women who knew which vendor had the best honey. Each person brought different energy and information into her week that her daughter and close friend couldn't provide. Not because they weren't wonderful, but because they were only 2 people. Bridging through these light connections, Margaret's world suddenly had texture again. She learned about opportunities, resources, and experiences she'd been completely unaware of. Emotional rhythm, those repeated Tuesday and Thursday mornings, the familiar faces at the market, the quick text from Rita, all created pulses of connection throughout her week that stabilized her mood in ways that one monthly visit from her close friend simply couldn't match, no matter how meaningful that visit was. She didn't find one perfect friend. She found a dozen friendly moments scattered through her week. And her nervous system stopped sending loneliness signals because it was receiving regular evidence. You're not alone. You're part of something. People see you. That's not an exception. That's how this works for most people when they stop chasing depth and start building breadth. The effects go even deeper than researchers initially expected. Researchers observing older adults noticed something striking. Those who engage with many casual contacts experience higher positive affect, the psychological term for everyday good mood, and lower levels of depressive thinking. Even more interesting, when social networks become too narrow, limited to only family members, the protective effect of connection weakens. Variety, not volume, is what matters. So here's an uncomfortable question. When's the last time you talked to someone who wasn't family? Here's a useful exercise. Think back to yesterday. How many people did you greet outside your immediate circle? If the answer is 0 or 1, that's simply a signal your social world could use more variety, and that's completely fixable. Think of social variety like a nutritional diet. Imagine eating only one food every day. It might sustain you, but your health would fade without variety. Social life works the same way. Family fulfills core emotional needs, but casual ties supply the micronutrients, stimulation, perspective, and a fresh sense of connection. This doesn't mean light ties replace deep ones. They complement them. Close relationships provide stability and emotional depth, while everyday connections add vitality and breadth. The magic lies in balance. And the quality of those tiny encounters matters just as much as quantity. Polite but cold exchanges don't nourish. You need warmth, curiosity, and presence. In real life, this means everyday settings can become networks of well-being. Community classes, a painting workshop, local history lecture, or music group naturally foster repeated light contact that turns unfamiliar faces into friendly ones. Part-time volunteering does the same, offering structure, meaning, and the rhythm that builds casual connections. For those less mobile, even neighborhood rituals make a difference. Saying good morning to the mail carrier, chatting with someone at the grocery checkout, or exchanging waves with other walkers all create micro-moments of connection. Each moment tells your body you're part of the rhythm around you. There's also what psychologists call the small talk effect. Brief interactions with acquaintances, a quick chat at a cafe or during exercise class, aren't meaningless. Research shows these verbal exchanges help regulate emotions. When you share a smile or a few words, your brain releases neurochemicals that soothe stress and lift mood. It's like receiving a small dose of social nourishment throughout your day. Now, what about online communities? Can they replace face-to-face contact? Here's what the research actually shows. For those with mobility challenges, online communities can serve as valuable bridges, but aim to supplement, not replace, face-to-face interaction when possible. The warmth of a real voice, eye contact, and physical presence communicates safety in ways screens can't fully replicate. Still, virtual book clubs or hobby forums can help maintain connections, especially as a starting point. So we know why casual connections work. The science is clear.